sprint to the waiver wire and add these players before the waivers go ahead and clear. I don't waste time, let's get right into the video. If you do appreciate that, hit that like button. It helps me out a ton as a creator, and subscribe because the button is right there if you are new. But make sure to stick around to the end of the video because I will give you a few defenses that are absolutely amazing to stream this week that you want to make sure you have on your roster, or at least you pick up so somebody else can't have them. But the best ad of the week, if you need a running back, or even if you don't, is going to be Audric Estime. This backfield has completely spun 180 degrees. I could have told you that his snaps would be increasing. There were a good amount of reports saying that Audric Estime would increase his snaps as the weeks go on, but in no world did I expect him to come out and see the split that he saw in week 10. If we get into it, Estime played 45% of the snaps, Javonte played 29%, and then McLaughlin to see 12% of the snaps. This led Audric Estime to lead the team in rushing with 14 attempts and 53 yards against Kansas City, I might add, who allowed the #1 least amount of points to running backs and the second least amount of yardage to those running backs. It is a very, very tough matchup, and he managed to do pretty good in that aspect. Now, the snaps might be out of whack sometimes with this team. That's just what happens when you have Sean Payton, but the usage number on these snaps is really what's important, and it followed with Audric Estime still, because sometimes you can see a bunch of snaps, but you're just blocking or you're running routes, but you don't actually get targeted. Audric Estime had an 82% running back rush share last week. That was top 10 in the NFL, but that led him to 2 out of the 3 red zone opportunities last week with 14 carries compared to Javonte at only 1 and Jaleel McLaughlin at 2. So who knows what's going to happen with this offense. I've talked before about the philosophy of this backfield with Sean Payton. 1 week is going to be all Javonte. 1 week is going to be Audric Estime. I've had him in stash videos for months now at this point. If you guys do want to stay 1 week ahead of everything in fantasy football, make sure to subscribe if you are new. I would love to have you guys a part of this channel for the rest of the season. But if we dive deeper into the usage splits on the snaps that they did see, Audric Estime saw 100% of the snaps in the short yardage game and about half of the early down snaps, which is good. Now, if you have Javonte Williams, you don't have to completely just abandon him and be really scared, because he did see 7 out of the 8 total 2-minute drill snaps and half of the third down snaps. So it's not wraps. Yes, he only saw 1 carry and didn't really have that much usage, but he was still used in the important parts of the field. Now, there's nothing that's going to say that will continue, but he's not a complete throwaway. I wouldn't drop Javonte Williams. That's just the nature, again, of the Sean Payton offense. It's going to be a 3 running back by committee moving forward, and they do get a matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, which is tough to running back, so I wouldn't necessarily be streaming Audric Estime this week. Still, he's going to be a stash on our rosters just like he has been for the previous few weeks, but now his roster percentage is going to jump, and a lot of people are going to want to get him, so now would be your time to do that. But another running back, if everybody's picking up Estime or you don't want to do it, Gus Edwards is going to be that guy. J.K. Dobbins gets 8.5 fantasy points last week on 15 carries for 3 receptions, 65% of the snaps. That is not bad whatsoever, but then we see Gus Edwards in the first game back from coming off of IR since week 5. He sees 10 carries for 55 yards and only 25% of the snaps, but finishes with 5.5 fantasy points, all of that coming off his rushing usage. As expected, Gus Edwards' usage wasn't necessarily extremely valuable. He didn't lead in 2-minute drill snaps or get really that much goal line work, but he was involved slightly in everything, which is, again, a good sign coming off IR, but it's almost a guarantee that Gus Edwards' snaps will 100% increase. In the first 4 weeks of the season, when he was healthy, he averaged just under 40% of the snaps, and the offense is improving. They're averaging 23.6 points per game over the last 5, which is extremely going to help the upside of everybody in this offense, especially the running backs, because if you're not going to be playing from behind and playing catch-up, you can stick to the run game a lot more, which is what the Chargers really like to do. Now, this isn't to say that J.K. Dobbins is doomed completely. His value does definitely go down with the usage of Gus Edwards and involvement in this offense, but Edwards is going to act more as our handcuff running back that we want to be adding. If Dobbins were to miss any games, Kamani Vidal immediately goes into a healthy scratch position last week after Gus Edwards was activated, so he can be dropped if you're still holding on to him. But Edwards 100% will increase his snap share as the season goes on, so you definitely want to get him now before it's too late. J.K. Dobbins does have some injury history as well if you do want to buy into that, but a lot of people started to drop Demario Douglas over the last few weeks, which I really don't understand. He does still need to be rostered. The Patriots team is going to be up and down. There's really no way to avoid that, but with Drake May, this offense typically is more on the ups than it is the downs compared to their previous numbers. In the Patriots win over the Bears last week, Demario Douglas finished with 4 receptions on 5 targets, 9 fantasy points. Now, that's nothing crazy, but he does continue to be Drake May's favorite target and most consistent target out of everybody in this offense, leading the team in first read target share. And we know Drake May doesn't have a ton of success throwing the ball deep, whether that's a him problem or the team. The offensive line doesn't really give him a chance to let the routes develop and run like a very deep threat offense. So that's going to help guys like Demario Douglas that play in the slot and see more routes in the short game. Now, he did only play 45% of the snaps with KJ Osborne returning and Jalen Polk getting more reps, but both of them are playing over 40% of the snaps last week. I don't expect that to really continue. The consistency from all these other receivers has not been the same as Demario Douglas. He's been the one guy that can actually perform, so I don't think Gerard Mayo is really putting these guys in to do anything substantial, because Jalen Polk had 1 reception on 41% of the snaps. It was a touchdown, but any of you guys could have scored that touchdown. Replace him with any other wide receiver and they would have scored. Like, it was open, it was a simple route, nothing really more than that. But another receiver is Adam Thielen, and he is worth a look in the future. The Panthers are coming into their bye week this week, so he's not necessarily an urgent add, but if your league is sharper, you might want to add him now before he comes back from IR after the bye week. Bryce Young has actually looked pretty decent despite having 126 passing yards. That's not good, but compared to his previous games, he actually looks a lot more solid, less turnovers, not making as many wrong decisions. So with that improving very, very slightly, this offense is going to be a little bit more elevated, hoping these wide receivers actually put up fantasy points. And you don't necessarily need a quarterback to be fantasy viable to make fantasy wide receiver options. I mean, look at Cedric Tillman. Jameis Winston isn't going to be an every week starter, but he's performing pretty good and giving his wide receivers a chance. But we have guys like Jatavion Sanders, Xavier Legette, and Jalen Coker, all guys in this offense that are kind of on the fringe of being flex players for the Panthers. With Adam Thielen coming back after their bye week, I do expect all of the snap shares and the usage and routes run for all of these guys to kind of solidify into what we should expect for the rest of the season. So I would be holding Adam Thielen until that happens. And then after week 12, week 13, if he just doesn't perform and is not that guy in the offense, then we can go through and drop him. But he does get the 10th easiest rest of season schedule for wide receivers, and their fantasy playoff schedule is very, very, very good. So I would be holding him for that fact, see what he can do. He is still a very capable wide receiver, even if he's not in the best offense in the world. But if you're looking for a quarterback, maybe your main quarterback is on bye or you're dealing with injuries, Russell Wilson can be a guy you can stream because he gets the number one best matchup against the Ravens, who allow the most points to quarterbacks this year and a ton of points to wide receivers. Everything over the pass and for quarterbacks is very, very positive for them. Just look at their recent games. 34 to the Bengals last week, 10 to the Broncos the week before that, which isn't great, but 29 to the Browns, 31 to the Buccaneers, 23 to the Commanders, 39 to the Bengals. I can keep on going. They're averaging almost 27 points a game given up on defense. That's really, really good. And the Steelers are performing very well. They just had a really good game against the Commanders. They performed. They put up points. The Steelers are rolling. They don't have the highest pass volume in the world, but Russell Wilson can score touchdowns, and especially now that you have Mike Williams and George Pickens, guys that can spread the field and actually allow for more upside, it should be a good spot for Russell Wilson this week. But another guy, a tight end here, is going to be Dawson Knox. We saw last week that Kincaid left early with a knee injury, and he tried to come back. It didn't end up happening. He said that he just didn't feel good to go. He took himself back out of the game. So if that knee injury happens to be anything important, Dawson Knox can 100% be a tight end we fill in and flex. He gets a matchup against the Chiefs this week, who are a really tough defense, but to tight ends specifically, they are top 3 in points allowed. That is really good. We've seen previous years that Dawson Knox can actually produce. Ever since Dalton Kincaid came into this offense being drafted 2 years ago, Dawson Knox just hasn't really had that chance. Now he's going to be the only tight end if he happens to miss time. The Bills are a good offense. They're 10th in passing yards, 3rd in touchdowns. There is upside here to go ahead and be starting him. But now to my favorite part of the video, talking about the defenses we can't go through and stream. The Vikings are going to be my number 1 option here. They get a matchup against the Titans this week, which are a very good matchup in every aspect. I know Calvin Ridley and Will Levis, as of last week, have been kind of producing and been getting some attention from people, but still, they're not good. Will Levis is the quarterback 36 in passing yards and passing attempts, and he averages 1.2 interceptions a game, and he's the quarterback 37 in deep pass completions at 0.8 per game. Not even one deep ball completed. That's just not good. The Titans allow the 2nd most points to opposing defenses this year, which is also a plus. The Vikings have a very, very solid defense on their own, so I have no worries for them. They aren't rostered in a ton of leagues just yet either. I do like the Dolphins this week as well if you can't get them against the Raiders coming off a bye week for them, but the Raiders allow the 3rd most points to opposing defenses. And the thing with the Dolphins defense is they allow a good amount of points to running backs, but they are very, very tough against the wide receivers, against the quarterbacks. Everything in the pass game is very locked down, and that plays exactly to the weaknesses of the Raiders. They really don't have a run game, but the pass is really all that they can do, and that's not even that efficient. We can also go through and grab the Texans. They get a matchup versus Dallas, which last week we saw against the Eagles. The Eagles defense isn't necessarily the best in the world, and they absolutely struggled. Didn't put up a touchdown, only 6 points. Cooper Rush finished with like 45 passing yards, not even a touchdown. It was very bad. Trey Lance, if he ends up starting, is going to be even better for this defense because he is a turnover merchant. And the Texans are very good in stopping the run game despite dealing with a good amount of injuries, so it's just going to lock them up even more. The Rams is also another option against the Patriots, and the Packers against the Bears, who have been very, very much underperforming. But that is going to finish off this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the waiver wire trap video coming tomorrow. You do not want to miss that because there are so many traps, more than there are actual waiver ads this week.